What's up everybody, welcome back to my channel and to episode 3 of my Let's Play Open RuneScape Classic series. In today's episode we're going to be continuing our journey to level 10 in all skills. One of the first things that I want to do, however, is to take a look at some of the surplus resources that we produced in the last episode. As you can see here, in the last episode we produced 1,200 bronze arrowheads that we can turn into arrows, 5 additional bronze plate mail legs, and 26 extra bronze plate mail bodies. My first step today is going to be to go sell this extra armor and see what kind of gold we can fetch. The general store in Varrock will buy our bronze plate mail legs for 32 gold each and our bronze plate mail bodies for 64 gold each, which I think is a great start for our fledgling account. Alright, after hanging out here for just a few minutes to make sure that we got the top dollar for each of our items, I am now sitting on a stack of just over 1,800 gold. We've made our first K. Now our next order of business, to finish cleaning up from the last episode, is going to take some grinding. We're currently sitting on a pile of 1,200 bronze arrowheads in the bank, and for those to turn into arrows, we are going to need feathers. And so for my next magic trick, I'll be pulling 1,200 feathers out of a hat, or rather grinding chickens until I've collected them all. So I spared you guys the monotony of watching me collect 1,200 feathers from chickens manually. However, in the time that you missed, I made some significant progress to my levels. So I essentially started from level 1 in my combat stats, except for hits where I started from 10. And yeah, just by killing chickens to collect feathers, I've hit level 10 attack, 10 defense, 20 strength, 17 hits, and 10 prayer. In a relatively short amount of time, which is awesome. I also passed the 100 total skill level milestone, and as you can see at the bottom, my overall skill total is 128 right now, which is awesome. So in my journey to raise all skills to at least level 10, I've already reached level 10 in 7 out of the 18 skills offered by Classic. Alright, so I now have 1,200 feathers collected, as you can see here, and 1,200 bronze arrowheads. So the next thing that I'm going to need to finish making arrows are the shafts for the arrows, which I can produce by collecting logs and using a knife on the logs to create shafts. I believe it's 10 shafts for 1 log, so I'll need to collect 120 logs. I have the axe to do that. I'll also need a knife to fletch the logs into shafts. So I guess I'll get started by collecting logs. I'll go ahead and put away my bronze for now. I've been wearing it just because, you know, it's been a lot of fun. I guess it was useful to kill chickens, kind of made it go by a little faster, but we definitely don't need the bronze for wood cutting, unfortunately, or I would just carry it around. I'll take out my bronze axe, and I think I need to put up this raw chicken. But after that I should be good to go to start collecting logs. I'll collect 120, then we can go buy a knife and get started with fletching. When you leave the Western Varrock Bank, you're actually right next to the western gate of Varrock itself, and if you walk a short distance to the west, you'll find a nice little patch of trees, just perfect for doing some wood cutting in close proximity to a bank. And it also was a big hotspot for botting back in the day, which I'm very glad to say is not a problem in Open RuneScape Classic as far as I can tell. I've just finished collecting 120 logs, and the next step is going to be to take some money, hopefully no more than 10 gold. I'm assuming it'll be 1, but just in case, we're going to take this money to the general store and buy a knife. So it actually looks like the general store doesn't sell a knife, which is interesting, but I think I remember this from the original RuneScape Classic. I'm fairly sure there's a random tool that's sitting out behind Bob's Brilliant Axes in Lumbridge, and it might be a knife. I don't know for sure that it's a knife, but the general store doesn't have a knife. And I remember that whatever tool is behind the axe store wasn't in the general store, so I think what we're going to do is make the trip south to Lumbridge, head out behind Bob's Brilliant Axes, and see what tool is laying on the ground out there, and hope that it's a knife. So I actually, I didn't really intend to box with this goblin hanging out here the Lumbridge courtyard, but as you can see with our increased attack strength and defense levels, even just boxing with the goblin, he was pretty easy, made quick work of the goblin. But I'm right over here, back to the point, I'm right over here by Bob's axes, and if you look behind, there seems to be a knife on the ground. So I was right that there was a tool behind the axe shop, and it does happen to be a knife, so that's just great. The one thing is that I can't quite get to it from the courtyard. I think I'm going to have to leave out the back of Lumbridge Castle and go around. Assuming there is a back door, I think there is, but I'm not certain. Let's just go explore for a moment. I feel like maybe in old school RuneScape and or RuneScape 3 there might be a back door to the castle. Wow, I'm guessing not. Okay, so looks like no back door to the castle that's easily accessible, so we're going to have to just walk around the castle, it looks like. Okay, so walking around the castle works. Made my way around the southern end of the castle and made my way to the knife. Perfect, we now have a knife. We can get started with fletching. I'm going to go ahead and head back to probably Varrock, to the bank, probably to the west bank, and we'll get started with fletching out some arrow shafts. I think it's really cool how, as I'm playing the game, my development of one skill or set of skills naturally leads to the development of others in this ecosystem of different skills supporting one another. For example, while I was woodcutting the logs for the arrow shafts so that we could work on fletching, I actually hit, let's see, I hit 17 woodcutting in the process, which is awesome. That is now our 8th skill that I've raised to level 10 or higher, leaving just 10 left before we have all skills at least level 10. Okay, it's been literally forever since I've trained the fletching skill on Classic, so let's just see how this works. I'm going to use the knife on the logs, and we get a little menu. It says make arrow shafts. We're going to take that option, and it says you carefully cut the wood into 10 arrow shafts, and there you have the shafts. So I'm going to continue this process over and over again, working through all 120 logs so that we can generate 1,200 arrow shafts and get started making some basic bronze arrows. So we now have 1,200 arrow shafts fletched. We also have 1,200 bronze arrowheads and 1,200 feathers, so I'm ready to get started with creating bronze arrows. The first thing we're going to do is withdraw all of our feathers and all of our arrow shafts, and we're going to start by making headless arrows by using the shafts on the feathers, and it'll say you attach feathers to some of your arrow shafts, and we after that step now have 10 headless arrows. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for all 1,200 of our shafts and feathers. And next I'm going to attach our bronze arrowheads to our headless arrows. Like so. I will use bronze arrowheads on the headless arrows to produce 10 bronze arrows. And once again, I will keep this process rolling through all 1,200 arrows. I just finished fletching arrows. I am now sitting with a stack of 1,200 bronze arrows for use, and my fletching went from 1 to level 17, which is now our 9th skill to reach level 10 or higher, meaning we are halfway to the goal of getting all skills to level 10 or higher. I intend to keep this skilling trend going in this episode. The next task I'm going to take on will be to cook all of the raw chicken that I gathered while collecting feathers and see how close we can get to level 10 cooking. Alright, so I now have an inventory full of raw chicken. I have a bronze axe and a tinderbox. I'm ready to begin cooking. Our cooking is currently at level 1, as is our fire making. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand here and chop down this tree, use this for logs. I believe this is the closest tree to the Varrock West Bank. I'm going to light the logs. With my level 1 fire making, that may prove to be a challenge. Nope, not too bad. And I'm going to get started with cooking this raw chicken and see how much of it actually turns into usable meat, and also see how far along in my cooking level I can get for all of the chicken that we collected while collecting feathers. So out of my first inventory of raw chicken, I was able to salvage 5 pieces of cooked meat. It's not that great. Let's hope that as I move along, I will level up quickly and start to become more efficient at this. So I'm learning as I'm cooking that I don't actually have to leave a slot for logs in my inventory. If I chop down the tree with a full inventory, then the logs will actually just drop on the ground, which is perfect because that's what we would need to do anyway to light a fire. So I was just dropping off an inventory of cooked meat and dropping burnt meat on the ground at the West Varrock Bank when I actually misclicked in this corner on this ladder, and I remember that in RuneScape 2 and 3 there's a space underneath this West Varrock Bank, but I forgot that it existed in Classic, so I just wanted to show you. Underneath the bank there's this little area with some coins that you can pick up, but there's also this locked gate. You can see the gate is locked with gold coins on the ground. It looks like some gold ore maybe, and a couple brass necklaces that you would need a telegrab to pick up. But I just thought that was kind of funny that this space existed under the West Varrock Bank, even in Classic. Alright, so I just finished cooking all of my raw chicken, and I started with 346 raw chicken, and I ended up with 161 cooked meat, which I actually had 2 cooked meat in the bank already prior to starting this little task. So really I cooked 159 out of 346 raw chicken, which is less than half. It's not the most efficient process in the world, but as I got closer to the end in the later inventories, my efficiency really drastically shot up. I almost cooked all of the meat on my last trip, but my skills jumped up quite a bit. So my cooking, actually I was shooting for 10. I reached level 20 in cooking, and a level 7 fire making, which is awesome. And now that is over, and I have a good amount of meat to work with for doing combat in the future, I see no reason not to just go grind out level 10 fire making next. So now I'm going to head back out to this little patch of trees outside of the western gate of Varrock and cut logs and light fires until I hit 10 fire making. Alright, so after just 1 inventory of logs of lit, I've jumped to 12 fire making, which makes 11 skills that we have hit level 10 or higher at out of 18, which is awesome. This is a great start to the series. I'm really happy about that, and I'm thinking that now that I've skilled for most of the majority of the first half of this video, I think I'm gonna take a break and change things up a little bit, and maybe go questing for the first time on this account. So here I am in Lumbridge at Lumbridge Castle, and I just so happen to know, and I'm sure that you do as well, that the cook of Lumbridge Castle is in a bit of predicament as we start the game with a young account. So I'm going to head into the Lumbridge kitchens, past Hans, and I'm going to go ahead and chat with the cook. What am I to do? What's wrong? Oh dear, I'm in a terrible mess. It's the Duke's birthday today. I meant to be making him a big cake for this evening. Unfortunately, I've forgotten to buy some of the ingredients. I'll never get them in time now. I don't suppose you could help me out. Yes, I'll help you. Oh, thank you, thank you. I need milk, eggs, and flour. I'd be very grateful if you can get them to me. Okay, so we need milk, we need eggs, and we need flour. We need to bring these all back to the cook. Now, something that we're going to do is we're going to take this pot that's on the table next to us. That pot, I believe we will hold flour in this once we make it. Milk, flour, eggs. And something I just wanted to point out, next to the cook we have the cook's range, and I'm fairly sure that the the benefit of completing this quest is access to this range. So if I try to use the range, I wonder, let's see, if I examine the range, it says a hot, well-stoked range. Yeah, I guess I need some food to try to cook on the range, but I believe that the game will tell us that we can't use the range without the cook's permission, and I'm pretty sure that the perk, the benefit or reward at the end of this quest will be access to the cook's range. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking forward to, is the outcome of this. But we now need to gather 3 items. We need milk, flour, and eggs. Now I guess one of the easier ones to collect, probably the easiest to collect, will be the eggs. Earlier in this episode you saw me collect feathers from the chickens at the chicken coop that is to the north on the east side of the River Lum. So we're going to go ahead and walk that way. I'm going to walk up to this northern bridge. We'll cross it and go a little further to the north, and then right across from the cow pen there should be the farmer and his chickens, and we can go collect an egg. So I've made it to the farmer and his chicken coop, and we are going to take one of these eggs. But I also think I want to kill a chicken and collect its meat quickly, so that we can test out the range, trying to cook on the range before we complete the quest, and just see if that range is indeed restricted to us. I'll bury the bones. Alright, so we've got our egg, we've got some raw chicken that we can use to test the range when we get back. The next thing that we're going to need is milk. There is a cow pen right next to us, and I know that there should be a dairy cow. In RuneScape 2 and 3, there's a dairy cow specifically made for collecting milk, and this pen doesn't seem to have a dairy cow. Yeah, in the modern games you would get a bucket, and you would use the bucket on the dairy cow to get a bucket of milk. So in Classic, I guess what I'll do is I took some money out of the bank in case I needed to buy the pot and the bucket. What I'll do is I'll head over to the general store, we'll buy a bucket, and I guess I'll come back and try to use the bucket on the cow and just see if that produces a bucket of milk. So I'm going to check with the shopkeeper at the general store and see if they're even selling buckets. Let's take a look at their inventory, and they are indeed selling buckets for 2 GP each. We will buy one of them. Alright, so we now have a bucket. I'm going to head back over to the cow pen and try this out. Here we are in the fabled cow pen of Lumbridge. Yeah, it's the moment of truth. Let's try this out. I'm going to take my bucket, I'm going to use it on this cow, and it says you milk the cow, and we now have a bucket of milk. That is excellent. We now have 2 of our 3 requirements, an egg and some milk, and the last thing that we need is flour, and we already have the pot for flour. So what we're going to want to do is head to the mill, where we're going to collect some wheat and use the mill to process it into flour. And we'll collect the flour in the pot, and the location of the mill, I believe it's to the west of Lumbridge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head south from the cow pen, and I'm going to make my way to this to the northern bridge that we used a little bit ago, right here. This is actually the southern bridge. Okay, so I'll cross here. I must have walked past the northern bridge, but I will make my way to the north and then around Lumbridge Castle to the west. If I follow this road northwest, we'll pass the general store first, and then we will pass the bridge, the northern bridge. We have the sheep here. There's another quest that should exist in Classic called Sheep Shearer. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, so here's the northern bridge that we crossed, to get to the farmer and his chicken coop in the first place. I'm going to head north past this and then turn west right here. We've got some cabbages to one side and the sheep farm to the south of us. And if I keep going, I'm hoping to run into some wheat and a mill. If I walk this way, is it in between the two? No, it's not. Okay, so here's the mill. Perfect. Perfect. We've got this little farm next to it on the eastern side, and then we've got this little plot on the western side. Perfect. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got this patch of wheat and then the mill that we'll use to produce flour. So the first thing I'm going to do is collect some wheat. Maybe we'll kill this goblin while we're at it. Oh, it's a level 13 goblin. Shouldn't be too bad for us. My combat level is 15. Much improved from when we started the series. And I love the little spear that this guy's fighting with. It's kind of funny. He's doing some damage, but yeah, not too tough to fight. Sweet, he dropped some bones, and that's it. We'll go ahead and bury the bones, and then I will collect some wheat. Pick wheat, okay. I have to right click and pick wheat. It says you get some grain at the bottom. We're gonna head into the mill. Okay. And in here at the bottom we have the chute. Now this is where our flour, flour comes out here. This is where our flour is going to end up. We are going to climb the mill like so many have done before us. In RuneScape's history, here are the millstones in the middle floor, to the top floor, where we have the hopper and we have the levers to operate the hopper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this grain, I'm going to use it on the hopper. You put the grain on the hopper, and then I will operate the hopper. It says the grain slides down the chute. We will climb back down the ladder, past the millstones, to the bottom floor, to the chute. And if my memory serves me right, yep, this process has created flour. So now I will... Do I use the pot in the flour? Yes, you put the flour in the pot. Perfect. So we now have a pot of flour, we have a bucket of milk, and we have an egg. It looks like it's time to report back to the Cook of Lumbridge. I am now back in the kitchens of Lumbridge Castle with my bucket of milk, pot of flour, and egg. But before I talk to the cook, I'm going to actually attempt to use this raw chicken on the range just to see if we're allowed to use it. The cook says, "Hey, who said you could use that?" So, right, that just proves my point that we are currently unable to use the cook's range. Let's go ahead and talk to the cook. How are you getting on with finding the ingredients? I now have everything you need for your cake: milk, flour, and an egg. I'm saved, thank you. Give some milk, an egg, and some flour to the cook. Well done, you've completed the cook's assistant quest. You just advanced 2 cooking levels, and we gained 1 quest point. Let's go. We now have our very first quest point on this account, and I'm going to go ahead and try cooking on the range again. We are now allowed to do so. We now have our very own burnt meat, specially made in the Lumbridge kitchens. Oh dear. Alright guys, that action will wrap up today's episode. Thank you again so much for joining me today and for watching. In today's episode we were able to get our 11th skill to level 10 or higher, and we were able to complete the Cook's Assistant quest and earn our very first quest point. And I'm very excited in the next episode to continue our journey to leveling all skills to 10 or higher and to take on another quest. I'll see you guys in the next episode.